For centuries, it hung in museums, gazed upon by kings, tourists, and experts praised for its beauty, its technique, its balance. But what if I told you that this masterpiece hides something no one has ever told you? What if the most famous painting in the world wasn't just art, but a code carefully camouflaged before the eyes of all humanity? No, this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a fact backed by real discoveries, hidden documents, and symbols ignored for generations. A message was placed there, brushstroke by brushstroke, to transcend wars, fires, censorship, and conventions. A denunciation disguised as beauty. A map hidden beneath layers of paint and silence. The artist? A genius who lived in the shadow of official history, persecuted for knowing too much, and who found art the only way to speak without being silenced. But now, finally, someone has managed to listen. And what was discovered changes everything. You think about art, religion, and power. Prepare to immerse yourself in a journey that blends art, symbolism, forgotten wisdom, and a riddle that perhaps was painted for you. Because in the end, this painting may not just be about the past, it may be about you. Are you ready to see what your eyes never perceived? In the dim light of a centuries-old gallery in Boston, where the echoes of history mingle with the gentle scent of old paint and varnished wood, rests a painting that has seen more than many civilizations. At first glance, it is simply art, a harmonious composition, impeccably crafted, that draws sighs of admiration from hurried eyes. But hurried eyes rarely see. They observe, not see. And it was precisely in rejecting this superficiality that a symbology expert named Gregory Harlan decided to stop before the work and look with a kind of attention that demands courage and perspicacity. He saw what no one else saw. He felt what no one dared to feel. There was something there, behind the paint, that pulsed with the urgency of an ancient secret, like a whisper that spanned centuries. And that whisper finally found its ear. Gregory wasn't just a scholar. He was driven by a rare blend of intelligence, initiative, and an obsessive search for answers. The painting spoke to him like a code. The eyes of the figure depicted seemed to know too much. The position of the fingers, seemingly banal, recalled signs used by alchemists. The light falling on the character's face clashed with the shadow cast behind it. And what of the flower painted in the lower corner? A species that didn't exist in the century the work was made. This wasn't just aesthetic symbolism, it was coded language. A visual labyrinth. Art as a disguise for something dangerous. Gregory began to investigate and soon realized he was not looking at a simple canvas, but a living artifact, a body that hid a message beneath its layers of varnish. And this message, according to him, had the power to rewrite parts of human history. Little by little, he began to piece it together. The painting's style stood out from the rest of the artist's work. The neutral background, when digitally enlarged, revealed subtle geometric shapes, and a nearly invisible detail at the edge of the frame seemed to indicate coordinates. It was as if the painting itself had been designed to be a map, a pathway to something greater. Gregory, with his resilience and hunger for truth, delved into this investigation not out of vanity, but out of a sense of mission. He felt there was something there the world needed to know. Something that had been hidden not by chance, but out of fear. Fear of what the truth might provoke, fear of rupture, fear of awakening. After all, for centuries, the world had grown accustomed to accepting the official version of things. But what happens when a simple painting proves the truth was hidden in plain sight? What happens when a watchful eye finds a key asterisk and the door begins to crossing the pages of history like a silent survivor? That painting not only withstood time, it defied it. It survived wars that destroyed entire cities, fires that consumed libraries, mysterious thefts in which it disappeared for decades, only to resurface in unlikely hands. It changed frames as often as the truth changes its version. It changed countries, walls, owners, but never lost its essence. There, untouched in its soul, the work remained, observant, patient, like a witness, carrying within itself a secret so great that it had to disguise itself as art to avoid destruction. Each crack in the paint is a scar from its journey. Each restoration, an attempt to silence what it whispers. But it continues to speak, not with words, but with symbols, glances, and silences. It takes sensitivity to hear what only a heart trained by compassion and emotional intelligence can decipher. The figure depicted in the painting doesn't just look at peers. Its eyes span the centuries like beacons, searching for someone who dares to see it as it is. Many dwell on the technique, the masterful use of light, the balance of proportions, the elegance of forms. All of this is wonderful, of course. But there's something beyond, a symbolic dimension that escapes even the most renowned critics. The painting is a kind of inverted mirror. The more you look at it, the more it looks back at you. And this isn't a metaphor. Many visitors report feeling a strange shiver when staring at it for too long. Others say they hear a subtle buzzing, as if the canvas itself were emitting a vibration. Some move away immediately, overcome by an inexplicable fear. Others draw closer, drawn by a kind of inexplicable magnetism. This isn't superstition. It's about subtle affection, a connection that transcends logic and awakens something ancient in those who observe with an open heart. What few understand is that the work, in weathering the centuries, did so not merely with paint and varnish. It remained alive because of hope, the hope that one day someone would understand what was there, that there would be, even in such a fragmented world, someone with enough sincerity to see with the eyes of the soul. This painting was created by someone who understood the nature of time, of censorship, of intellectual solitude. The artist knew he would not live to see his message understood, and yet he did. This, in itself, is an act of altruism, of generosity, of faith. He trusted in humanity and deposited his secret there, like someone burying a seed in the desert, hoping for rain. And the rain came. Centuries later, finally, someone began to understand. But this understanding was only the first drop. There was still much to be unearthed, many layers to be removed. The real mystery, that one, still pulsed beneath the surface, waiting for someone with enough perseverance to keep digging. It was a flash, a tiny detail no one had noticed before, an almost insignificant spot hidden in the lower corner of the painting, like a birthmark that time had tried to erase. But Gregory, with his perspicacity and thirst for understanding, realized it was no coincidence. By applying ultraviolet light to the canvas, previously invisible layers were revealed. Phantom lines, nearly faded inscriptions, Latin words that seemed whispered by ancient ages, symbols bordering on the esoteric began to emerge. Alchemical diagrams, astrological markings, letters intertwined as if composing a visual score. The work revealed its second face, its true form. It was as if the artist had foreseen technological advances and left there a riddle, saved for a future time. A gift for the bold, a trap for the impatient. Experts were summoned, linguists, mathematicians, art historians, and even physicists. The painting now appeared as a palimpsest, not on paper, but in thought. One work hidden beneath another, a truth disguised as beauty. The language was encrypted, but not impenetrable. A sequence of Roman numerals hidden among the contours of the background pointed to a specific date, 1512. The same year a forbidden manuscript disappeared from the Vatican archives. Coincidence? Hardly. On the left margin, beneath layers of repainting, what appeared to be a star map emerged, but inverted, as if showing constellations from another perspective, perhaps even from another time. Collaboration among the scholars was essential. Each new clue generated astonishment, commotion, enthusiasm. It was as if the work were alive, reacting to the touch of truth. a symbolic organism, shaped with love and intelligence to protect itself from oblivion. The most striking thing was realizing that each symbol, each number, each revealed line seemed to dialogue with other works from the same period, as if they were part of a larger web, a hidden pattern, an ancient visual communication system. The diagram seemed to contain instructions. But instructions for what? A ritual? A hidden place? A forgotten formula? The answer was still hazy, but one thing was certain. That painting was just the tip of the iceberg. And Gregory felt it in his heart. This was no longer just art, it was a call. An invitation to intelligence, innovation, and overcoming. Because sometimes, the most complex codes are not made for computers, but for hearts that insist on searching. And in that moment, he knew that, by deciphering the painting, he might be opening the door to something that should never have been found. But how could he deny the call of something so profoundly human, so full of hope, respect, and wisdom? The only certainty was that the next clue was even more hidden. Little was truly known about him. His name appeared in scattered records, sometimes as an apprentice to a court master, sometimes as an informal advisor to an eccentric nobleman. But behind the signatures and firm brushstrokes lay a restless man, driven by a quest that surpassed what his contemporaries could comprehend. Many called him a genius. Others feared him, murmuring that he knew too much. His notebooks, discovered centuries later, were veritable treasure troves of intelligence, filled with formulas that blended science, astrology, art, and spirituality. There was a fusion between logic and faith, between the visible and the invisible, between official knowledge and hidden wisdom. He seemed to live in constant conflict between his love of beauty and the urgency to convey something he could not say aloud. His most famous painting, the one that now pulsed with codes, was in fact a desperate letter to the future. They said he frequented secret meetings in caves, that he exchanged letters with heretics hidden in forgotten monasteries. Some records hinted at his passage through Alexandria, others through Toledo, where the guardians of ancient knowledge gathered. Everything about him was shrouded in mist. It was as if he himself had chosen to erase his traces. His contemporaries noted his absence from public events, but few knew of his sudden travels, carrying only a notebook, brushes, and a dark cloak with hidden pockets. The artist did not seek fame. He sought reconciliation between body and spirit, between time and eternity, between humanity and the cosmos. His most enigmatic work was also his greatest risk, a disguised cry, an act of resilience against the imposition of silence. Putting his truth on canvas was an act of courage, proof that compassion and kindness do not need to shout to survive the centuries. And why hide so much? Because what he knew could destroy structures. He understood the impact of symbolic language. He knew that symbols are more powerful than swords. That's why he used art, a confident language, imbued with affection and beauty. His contemporaries saw only the painting, but he saw the coded message within. His life, marked by loneliness and suspicion, was the price for daring to leave a legacy that only minds with perseverance, altruism, and a modicum of emotional intelligence would be able to decipher. The artist lived like a ghost in his time, and died with a heart full of hope, the hope that one day, someone with different eyes would see what he saw, that someone would understand, that someone would have the initiative to continue what he started. And perhaps, by understanding the artist's soul, we would finally be ready to comprehend what he hid in each symbol. When Gregory returned to the painting with more trained eyes, something changed. It was no longer just an image. It was a pulsating organism of meaning, a hive of symbols and codes intertwined in almost infinite layers. The positioning of the depicted figure's hands formed an inverted triad present in Gnostic texts. The gaze, which seemed slanted, was directed precisely to a point in the painting where, under polarized light, a number engraved in nano-detail was revealed, 72, a symbol of divine wisdom, of the totality of knowledge according to Kabbalah. Even the neutral background, which had previously gone unnoticed, began to reveal geometric subtleties, lines that composed an imperfect six-pointed star, a hidden hexagram, a visual signature. It was as if the artist had created a symbolic labyrinth where each line was not merely aesthetic, it was functional. It was a construction, an enigma designed with love and a profound devotion to truth. The flower painted next to the figure, seemingly decorative, revealed even more. It was a lotus flower, a plant not even known in Europe at the time of the painting. But the lotus has ancient spiritual significance. It represents the rebirth of the soul, the ascension of consciousness above the chaos of matter. This was no random choice. The sky, with a hue that clashed with the painting's natural light, evoked the inner heaven described in Hermetic traditions. It was as if the painting had been constructed to act as a symbolic portal. And the most intriguing thing was in the background. A barely perceptible line formed an inverted pyramid. That's right, a pyramid that, in many doctrines, represents knowledge turned inward, a search for enlightenment, for wisdom, for understanding. Gregory was astonished. It was as if every detail had been crafted to reveal itself, but only to those who knew how to look. It wasn't long before scholars of alchemy, Kabbalah, and astrology pored over the painting. Sacred geometry was present throughout the composition. The proportions respected Pythagorean standards. There was a balance that wasn't just aesthetic, it was energetic, as if the painting had been made to generate a specific vibrational field. And this explained why so many people were moved when they saw it. It was emotion in art form, a reminder of our humanity, of our search for meaning. That work wasn't a painting. It was a prayer, a mirror, a silent manifesto. And for each symbol deciphered, a new one revealed itself, as if the painting itself knew it had found someone willing to dive deep. Someone with the courage to face not only the codes of the canvas, but the codes of themselves. Because deciphering the work also meant deciphering themselves. And this dive, it was still only just beginning, the discovery of hidden symbols. And messages quickly left the realm of intellectual curiosity and invaded darker territories. As soon as the first studies began to circulate in alternative academic journals, something strange happened. Documents that had been accessed weeks earlier disappeared from digital archives. Libraries claimed technical problems. One of the main restorers involved in the process was suddenly removed for administrative reasons. And most disturbing of all, an independent researcher who claimed to have deciphered the complete code suffered a domestic accident under circumstances never clarified. The silence, previously merely historical, was now systematic. It was as if an invisible force wanted to keep that painting in the comfortable place of ignorance. Because if what it hid were to come to light, the foundations of what we understand as history, faith, and even politics might need to be revised. And those who control the world rarely want to give up their official versions. Gregory, still impacted by the sequence of events, began to notice patterns. With each step toward the truth, obstacles arose. Emails didn't arrive. Supporters began to back away. Some urged him to let it go, as if warning him but unable to say more. Fear was in the air. And with fear came insecurity and loneliness. But he remained steadfast with resilience and an unshakable sense of purpose. He began to review the revealed symbols, cross-referencing data with omitted biblical passages, Hermetic treatises, and documents from the oldest religious councils. In one of the diagrams hidden in the painting, there was a representation of an inverted tree identical to those used by sects that preached forbidden knowledge in the 5th, 10th, and 16th centuries. This led one to believe that the painting might contain not only philosophical reflections, but veiled denunciations. Art ceased to be contemplation. It became accusation. Why so much effort to silence a painting? Because it spoke. And it spoke loudly, perhaps about an alternate timeline, perhaps about sacred figures portrayed under different names, or even about historical manipulations that sustain power structures to this day. What should have been just paint and canvas became a threat, a spark of intellectual innovation capable of igniting centuries of dogma. And it is at this point that history transcends the limits of art and merges with that of humanity. We are not talking about just a painting, but a living metaphor for what it means to seek truth in a world accustomed to pretending there is nothing beyond the surface. Gregory realized that continuing would require not only intelligence and strategy, but also love for truth, honor for history, and compassion for those still trapped in impoverished versions of who we are. And at that moment, when the world seemed to conspire against revelation, it was an unknown young woman who appeared with the next piece of the puzzle. Her name was Claire Delaney. Young, dedicated, almost invisible to the eyes of the traditional academic community, but with a thirst for truth that dwarfed any library. Ever since she was a child, she had felt something inexplicable when she saw that painting. It wasn't aesthetic admiration, it was something deeper, as if a forgotten part of herself was being summoned. As others passed, she paused. As others gazed, she immersed herself. And when Gregory's first discoveries began leaking online, Claire had no doubt this was the thread she had always hoped to unravel. With affection, hope, and a tenacious emotional intelligence, she dedicated years to studying the work. She scoured lost archives, wrote to museums, spoke with restorers, and taught herself Latin. And unlike many, she wasn't seeking fame. She sought connection with the artist, with time, with truth. It was she who noticed the millimeter-wide crack on the back of the frame. While assisting with a routine inspection for a conservation project, her trained eyes noticed something out of place, a small, almost imperceptible elevation. Upon careful investigation, with due respect and kindness for the integrity of the work, she discovered a cavity. Inside, folded and weathered by time, was a letter, handwritten in careful but coded script. She spent entire nights trying to decipher it. She cried, doubted herself, felt fear, but didn't stop. Perseverance was her fuel. Until, when she combined the letter's content with the symbols in the painting, everything began to make sense. It was as if the artist himself were speaking to her, explaining that his work was a silent denunciation, a hidden cry, an attempt to prevent ancestral knowledge from being lost forever. The letter spoke of persecution, of pain, but also of a profound trust in the humanity of the future. It was there, on that forgotten paper, that Claire found something no scholar had ever touched: the artist's heart. The letter not only explained some of the symbols, but also revealed the painting's true purpose: to protect the truth. The artist, persecuted and discredited, knew he couldn't speak, but he could paint. And so he left, in his paints and lines, a key to awakening. Claire realized that the work wasn't just an isolated piece, but part of a broader legacy, a universal code spread throughout other arts. Its discovery shook the community. Institutions had to rethink old interpretations. But more than that, thousands of people, upon learning the story, began to reconnect with something they felt was missing: meaning, significance, inspiration. And Claire? She became a symbol of a new generation of seekers. Ordinary people, guided by empathy, love, and initiative, capable of seeing where so many merely glance. But her journey was far from over, because, by connecting that painting with other works of the time, she opened a door that could no longer be closed. Claire's discovery was like a stone thrown into a calm lake. Ripples began to spread in all directions. Experts, historians, and even artists began revisiting other paintings from the same period, this time with more attentive eyes. And what they found was breathtaking. Similar symbols appeared in seemingly unrelated works, scattered across museums in Italy, France, Spain, and even private archives in the Netherlands. A pattern emerged. What had previously been seen as mere coincidence now formed a map, a puzzle that transcended borders, religions, and styles. A secret network of painters who, separated by time and space, seemed to have left clues to a common knowledge, a knowledge that needed to survive. It was the silent collaboration between restless souls, united by hope, understanding, and the desire to preserve something greater than their own existences. The symbols repeated themselves like visual echoes, hexagrams disguised in shadows, geometric patterns concealed in the garments of the figures portrayed, eyes that gazed at identical angles, tiny astrological signs hidden in stained glass, in details of tapestries, even in the architecture of the frames. Claire and Gregory, now working together, organized a panel with hundreds of overlapping images. It was like a cosmic map being assembled from art. And then they realized something even more surprising. Many of these works shared dates that, when numerically aligned, formed a Fibonacci sequence. The same sequence found in nature, in the spiral of shells, in the formation of galaxies. It was no coincidence. It was wisdom applied with symbolic intelligence. Art, there, was a universal language. And this language was a bridge between centuries, between souls, between a forgotten history and a humanity that could still remember. With each new work analyzed, a profound emotion also emerged, a collective commotion. People who had never been interested in art began to connect with the paintings, to feel something different. It was as if the truth hidden in the paintings resonated in the collective unconscious, as if we were all rediscovering something we had lost. The famous painting, the first one that triggered everything, was no longer an exception. It became the key, the opening of a parallel narrative that said, in clear visual terms, knowledge is eternal. It survives censorship, destruction, time. It survives when transmitted with love, affection, emotional intelligence, and humility. And now more than ever, it was alive. But like every great discovery, this one also brought questions. And the next answers lay in an even more nebulous territory, where the mysteries seemed to multiply the more one tried to solve them. No matter how far they had come, Claire and Gregory found themselves at the limit of accessible knowledge. It was as if the painting itself had been designed to reveal and conceal. With each layer uncovered, new questions arose. There were symbols that no linguist could translate, as if they were fragments of a forgotten language, or perhaps one invented by the artist himself. Diagrams that seemed to interact with each other depending on the light or the angle of observation. And at the center of it all, gaps. Parts of the message that seemed to have been purposefully veiled. Some experts began to believe the painting was part of something larger, that it was merely a piece of an artifact yet to be found, perhaps a collection of works, a manuscript, an instrument. Others believed the code would only be completed with a specific action, a sound, a gesture, a ritual lost to time. The painting began to behave like an inactive mechanism, a dormant secret. The question now was no longer what the painting reveals, but who should reveal it? Theorists from different fields began to propose ideas that seemed to border on the mystical. What if the painting was made to be deciphered by someone specific? A person born in a certain constellation, in a specific planetary cycle? Other, more pragmatic scholars argued that the knowledge necessary to fully decipher it once existed and was erased. That the language of painting depends on a lost culture, an extinct spirituality. And deep down, Claire didn't rule out any of these hypotheses. She felt she was facing something that transcended the physical. Something built with love, respect, and wisdom to withstand time, but that also depended on the evolution of humanity itself. As if the code could only be activated when we, as a species, were ready. Ready to face the truth, not with arrogance, but with humility. Not with fear, but with compassion. Even so, even incomplete, the message had already caused a profound shock. Institutions were questioned. Narratives were dismantled. And thousands of people began to see art with different eyes, curious, critical, sensitive eyes. The painting, once a decorative monument, was now treated with reverence and a twinge of fear, because it still holds something. Something that can change everything. And that frightens, but it also inspires. The still unsolved mystery is, in fact, an invitation. A call to initiative, to collaboration, to the generosity of those who share discoveries, to the perseverance of those who seek despite obstacles. Because, sometimes, the beauty of a secret lies precisely in its silence. And perhaps the most important thing is not what is hidden in the painting, but what it awakens in those who observe it. And to discover this, we must go beyond the paint. We must go to ourselves, to the essence of who we are. And the definitive answer may still be where we least expect it. Ultimately, the question that echoed loudest was no longer about the painting, nor the artist, nor even the hidden message. It was about us. Why does this search move us so? What lies in this yearning to decipher the hidden, to translate what lies beyond the visible? The truth is that this work, with all its complexity and mystery, serves as a mirror not of our appearance, but of our essence. It reveals that, behind the veneer of modern civilization, we are still beings in search of meaning, of belonging, of a story that contemplates us more sincerely. Art here functions as an oracle, a beacon, a reminder that we still have questions that technology cannot answer. A reminder that the silence of the screen can say more than 1,000 speeches. And above all, a reminder that the greatest of answers is perhaps held in the hearts of those who look with empathy, emotional intelligence, and true love. The painting, in its stillness, points to a collective wound, that of disconnection. We live in a time of information overload and a scarcity of meaning, of polished appearances and inner emptiness. And here, an old painting, worn by time, reminds us of the importance of understanding, of the delicacy of listening to the invisible, of the value of silence. Perhaps the fascination with codes, symbols, and hidden messages is simply a way of translating what we feel but can't name. Fear, insecurity, loneliness, but also hope, gratitude, thirst for inspiration. Each line of the work provokes us to look within, to rethink our own secrets, our untold stories, our abandoned paths. We are, each of us, an unfinished work. And perhaps that's why we feel so much when we look at that painting. Because it's not just showing us something, it's reminding us of who we are. And so, without fanfare, the painting reveals its greatest truth. It's about us, about our humanity, about our capacity to feel and transform, about our power of reconciliation with history, with art, and with existence itself. The hidden message, so sought after for centuries, was perhaps never a secret outside of us, but rather a call from within, to see with greater sincerity, to treat ourselves with greater kindness, to rewrite our lives with greater honesty, perseverance, and wisdom. Art is the beginning, the journey is the means, and the end, well, perhaps it hasn't arrived yet. Because true discovery doesn't end with the final brushstroke. It begins when we accept the painting's invitation and dare to gaze into the invisible. And the big question now is, are you ready to decipher your own work? Now that you've explored every line, every layer, and every mystery of this centuries-old work, tell me, what are you ignoring in your own life? How many messages are hidden in the silence of your emotions, just waiting for you to have the courage to decipher them? This painting isn't just a historical enigma, it's a mirror. It invites you to stop, breathe, and see beyond the surface. Because if a canvas was able to span centuries hiding a secret, imagine what lies hidden within you, just waiting for the right moment to awaken. How many times have you felt there was something greater, but didn't know where to begin? How many answers have you put off because the world taught you to live on autopilot? Perhaps it's time to look again, with different eyes, with more empathy, with more wisdom, with more love for who you are and who you can still become. This story doesn't end with the painting. It begins now with your choice. What will you do with everything you've learned here? Will you keep it as curiosity, or will you use it as fuel for a more purposeful life? If this journey inspired you, if any part of it touched something deep inside you, then you've already begun to decipher your own work, and this is just the beginning. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue with us on this adventure of discovering what lies beyond the obvious. Because knowledge, when shared with compassion and truth, has the power to transform not only how we see the world, but also who we are within it.